Hello guys, welcome to our narration. We decided to talk over this world record attempt, just to let you know the details behind it, how it came about and some interesting background. So as you can see, I'm getting ready to go. One interesting information is that I have done 100 laps in training. So I'm feeling pretty calm, but still, this is the Guinness World Record Day. So still a little bit nervous. How did you feel at this point, Joe?
Yeah, it was really nice to realise that we had already done it. I think that was an important mental, aspect to the pre-training, was just locking it in and knowing that it was not only possible but what to expect. So I was confident in that, but the pressure was definitely on because there was timers and cameras and people.
I definitely felt the pressure from the perspective of, I didn't have much sleep the night before, about 4 hours. And I was just mucking around with this website that I wanted to be working. It wasn't. And I was like, no, it has to be working. So, and but in the end of the day, you turn up and you do your best. So here I'm doing 2 laps. I always do 2 warm-up laps just to kind of check out the speed, the equipment, and how I'm feeling in the water. The first lap is usually 25 seconds per lap.
Yep.
Then I have a little rest, and the second lap is 22 seconds.
Yep. And that's been consistent, and I think this part was just, all engines check and make sure that everything was functioning as per usual. And just to get as much familiarity about, what's happening on this day, and then compare that to our training, just so we feel really solid.
Yeah. So while we have a little bit of time, I just want to talk about my background. I started freediving nearly 15 years ago, and I remember my very first training session. I didn't have any fins, back then there was just plastic, and I borrowed some and I hated it. I didn't know what to do with them, and someone just said, do no fins. You are a swimmer, you can do whatever. And this was in Sydney pool, and I remember, okay, I'll give it a crack. I push off the wall. The arm stroke was kind of okay. I moved, but then I kicked and I actually went backwards. Would you believe it, Joe?
Oh, so good. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, because I didn't go backwards, but I remember the first time I did a no fins kick, I remember coming up and Michaela, happily and healthily laughing at me and just saying that was, interesting. And we had another
I
go.
wasn't really laughing, Joe. You were actually pretty good, compared to some other people I've seen. But this just goes to show, that I wasn't born like this. I was a swimmer, but I never did breaststroke.
Yeah, and that was some of the feedback from the day, people watching just saying, hey, it was a good experience to realise that somebody could, be human in the flesh and do this, because the general public often, puts this hero story on individuals and, raises them to a status of superhero or superhuman, and, that's really just hard work, is the superhuman.
Yeah, I really think it is now, when I'm kind of considered one person that has done something in the entire world. I can just see the commitment, the passion, and the work that went behind it. Joe, have we ever cancelled a training session?
No, we've had lightning cancel our training sessions many
right.
times, and hail and flooding pools, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
We turned up in no matter the weather or how bad we felt. Joe has a little baby and he came half asleep with red eyes and whatnot, but he always turned up. I always turned up, and we always did our best, in each situation.
Yeah, and I think that was the learning curve for me early on, was just to I realised what it takes is to be extremely disciplined, and I knew that that was a rare trait, and that's what had to be done. So I learnt that early on, and it paid off, and then it was reinforcing because as we turned up, we got better, and the progress was right there. So it was encouraging and motivating to keep going.
Joe, tell me, how did you feel when we met at this very pool the first time? And then we chatted a few weeks later, I don't remember how, but I told you, remember, in that phone call, do you know what? I actually have this crazy goal. I want to set a Guinness World Record.
Yeah, I think, I try not to let myself get too high and low in things. Here we go, we're about to take off here. So that was the crowd was counting us down. So that's the official start. Lap 1 of 100.
That's right.
And yeah, a little bit of nerves for me here because the first 20 is the critical point. It's usually the hardest, but later on I'm sure Mish will share with you that those first 20 were the easiest first 20 that she's ever done. So, but yeah, back to the original question. I try not to get too excited about things because then I feel like the low's coming as well. And so I try to stay pretty level through that stuff. So when I realized you were doing it, I thought, well, that's, again, interesting. And then, it was just a test then to see whether I was, even capable of being invited into that space to help out in any way. But, I was stoked for you. I was super stoked that you were crazy enough to do it. I was pretty level because it wasn't really something that I had thought about a lot, and I hadn't had the emotion behind it at that point. And so for me, I was just, if you wanted to do it, I was happy to, be interested in your journey. But soon enough, it became a big part of my journey as well. So things changed, quickly in that regard. And then my emotions were involved, and then it had meaning for me. So, that was a big transition in this, which took a few, after we met and trained and did some things, and then it hit home that it was real.
Yeah, that I was serious.
That you were serious, yeah. Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I kind of, probably stood back a little bit and just letting you do your thing, and you had other training partners, but soon enough your kind of discipline and dedication just blew everyone else away. So there was nobody left.
To put it nicely.
Yeah. So it was basically, if I didn't step up and step into that space, it wasn't really going to happen, because unless you were going to train by yourself, and that's a no-go.
Impossible, that's right.
So yeah.
I remember when our first meeting at this pool, and you turn up with this huge military backpack. And I'm like, oh my God, this will be fun. He's a military guy, I'm gonna die. And of course, it's totally the opposite, but it was kind of funny, my first thought.
Your first impression.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason that I was even at the pool was because I did my level 1 and level 2 freediving training in Indonesia many years ago, and it was very inspiring, and there were some beautiful divers there, and I always knew that it was something that I needed to get back into for my own journey. And so I promised myself that I would start that process again, and the day that I basically decided that, I jumped in the pool and started training, and I looked next to me, and I thought Mish was just doing swimming laps, and I thought I was like the hero doing 25 meters underwater and like the coolest person in the pool. And then after a few laps, I realized that she was really never coming up for her breath. And so I remember I had to intervene and ask you a question. So when you had a breather, I just remember saying, are you doing some freediving training? Well, that's interesting. And the conversation started from there.
Yeah, it was my lucky day, I have to say. Because, finding an amazing training buddy and somebody who you can rely on in this sport, I think everyone struggles with it. Yeah. Even Jordi, who is narrating this video, she came all the way from Brisbane.
Yep.
And there is a huge club, Brisbane Bull Sharks, and they have 100 members. And at that level, she's an Australian champion. She struggles to find somebody who she can rely on. And who is there. She even told me she would pay someone to just be there, make sure she comes up, have a coffee, give them breakfast, I don't know what, just to rely on someone so she can train. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah, and look, for me, that sort of stuff has come easy now because, many years ago, I dedicated, in my mind at least, that I was going to spend, my life, living my passions and the things that I, have a lot of meaning, as opposed to, jobs and things that, I really lost interest in completely and didn't kind of light me up. And I understand that that's a massive challenge and it's not available for everybody, or people aren't willing to make those decisions, and there is sacrifices in that. But for me, this sort of experience that was then created, it reinforces that, and you get to have these beautiful experiences, and you get to, have this rich photo book of your life that has so much meaning, and people don't forget these sort of experiences. And so it's all worth it for me. And I've been really blessed in a lot of areas of my life like this. But it's because I made that conscious choice to say, I'm going to do the things that I love. So for me, it was an easy decision when, you were committed to this, that I was going to support you in that journey, because I recognized how important that would be, not only for you, but for the community, and then especially for your family and your kids to see that. And again, that's more meaningful than not doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was always gonna be about the journey. I have to work really hard mentally through the perceived pressure. I made a decision early on that this is gonna be a public event, and that it's gonna be streamed live, and there'll be friends, family, my kids, And I'm the type of person who really used to crumble under pressure. I know this about myself. I used to build up everything in my head and then almost just paralyze myself to the point that I couldn't perform at my best. So with this, I wanted to do it differently. I knew I had to process all of this before the day, way before the day. So I started learning, and exposing myself to different challenges, things I have never done before. One of those breakthrough moments was a couple of months ago, maybe 2.5 months ago now. I went to a breath workshop with Beck, my really good friend. And it was one of these 3-day retreats, 15 women, and we were talking, we were breathing, and I even danced, which is something unusual, and kind of let myself go into that experience. And on the very last day, the breath session opened up something for me from my past. And I actually realized why I love freediving so much. Because I went back to my past when I was 8 years old, and the first time I saw the ocean was the Mediterranean in North Africa, in Libya. And I remembered jumping into these waves and feeling so free, compared to the pool, which was always training, but the ocean was not. I was still in the water, which I loved, but I felt the energy of the ocean. And that just locked into my brain, and some 25 years later, I was back in the ocean holding my breath through freediving, and that feeling came back. And that's why I love it so much, because, it just makes me super happy.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's actually surprising, even though we've spent a lot of time together in the past 6 months, it's surprising for me to hear that you communicate about yourself of sort of crumbling under pressure, because the first thing I thought was just how crazy and brave you were of putting these things out there and saying, this is the training that I'm going to do. I'm going to tell everybody I'm doing a world record attempt on this date. I thought you're a lunatic for doing that, because the writing's on the wall. But obviously that was a skill that you learned, and it became a superpower. And I noticed that early on, and that was something that we've spoken about a lot, was where I feel like you're exceptional is if you say we're doing 40 laps at 36 seconds, we're doing 40 laps at 36 seconds. You're not doing 45 laps, and you're not doing 35 laps, and you're not changing the time. So I think for whatever reason, you learnt that to control your mind and emotions, you needed to stick to the plan and trust in the process. And that's something that I witnessed you unfolding your superpower. And that was that, just trusting in the process, doing what you said you were going to do, no more, no less, and then building on that. It was rare, I think. But now I understand why you would make those bolder statements in advance and let people know, because that was also the plan. It was, no, this is what I'm going to do, and I don't have an out or an excuse. And I think it highlights the difference between a high-level athlete or a highly successful individual compared to someone who isn't. They may hide or keep, secretive, for lack of a better word, their goals and aspirations, because if they don't say them, they don't actually need to hold themselves accountable. And so that's something that's been really interesting, me watching you, and it started to rub off on the things that I'm doing. And I've started to say to you a few things that, okay, this is what I'm going to do now, and it's working. It's holding me accountable to that, because I've shared that, with somebody else, and it's out there now. So if I don't, you feel like an idiot.
Yeah, I've learned over the years that I trust my instinct, and usually what I do is I keep a diary, and I go and review the day after I've done the training session. But more importantly, I write the training for the next day. So it's already written there. It doesn't have all the details, but it does have in, each row, what am I going to do? And then I fill in all the details. Like if I'm doing pull training, it already has it written down, what I'm going to do. And, one of the big reasons why I actually did this is, believe it or not to be famous, but I actually wanted to see if I can coach myself to this level. Because my ultimate dream, in freediving is to be the best coach in the world. And I believe that if I'm able to live through something like this and experience it, I'm living a life of an athlete. I know what they feel. I know how I felt. I know the pressure and so on. And I believe I'll be able to help someone from this perspective, because I've done it and I keep doing it up until I can, But that's the main motivation.
Yeah, that's great. And I actually have a question for you in regards to, we said that, we never cancelled any training sessions, which we never did, unless the weather was wild. But there was a few training sessions that got altered, but there's a very warranted reason for that. So did you learn more about, women's health and women's, perspective as an athlete when they're going through their menstrual cycles? Was that appeared to me like a big thing we spoke about a lot, but I think that's something that is interesting and people should inquire about and understand a little more, because it was very significant from a performance perspective and very important from an emotional perspective. So yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because we were on schedule, and I had this date in mind. Remember when I called you up, 6 weeks ago, and I was calculating, looking back at my diary, my calendar, what's going to happen. Because, things changed. Things were unpredictable suddenly. Normally, my cycle is to the day, like to an hour. I can feel everything's happening perfectly. But I think because of my training and the level of effort I was putting onto my body, suddenly it just became quite random.
Yeah, there was big hormonal shifts at that, pushing the edge of physical capacity. So that changed your cycles.
Yeah, it did. And I talked to my GP about it, and we consulted if I should take hormones and how to manage the situation. I actually changed the date because of it. It used to be the 10th of November, and then after my calculations and your advice. We changed it to the 17th of November. And it actually ended up being right on the edge. I wasn't at my strongest on the 17th. I was just coming out of, being pretty tired and still, recovering from what was happening.
We almost nailed it.
Yeah, I feel this costed me perhaps a few laps.
Yeah.
But so what? I knew if it was going to be the first, second day, or one of those ranges of days where I was feeling really bad and horrible, I would have to cancel. I would have to reschedule.
Yes.
It wasn't one of those days.
So let everyone know how you did feel on the 10th, because,
I felt pretty miserable.
Yeah, you were low energy on the 10th.
Very low energy.
So, we really picked up a lot by prolonging a week at least. Yeah. Ideally would have been another week. 5 days, 7 days from my observation.
Yeah.
And this is something that there are some beautiful, amazing female athletes out there who are aware of this now, and they're doing podcasts and they're sharing information, they're writing books, but it's not general knowledge, and it needs to be, because women, a lot of the studies and the science that gets put out there for athletes is all done in men. It's all males, and so it's a different kettle of fish when we're talking about females who are having menstrual cycles, and so it's a big one that needs to be addressed.
I was shocked to find this out when I started to dig deeper and listen to some of the podcasts. I mean, it's 50% of population.
50%, yep.
Yep. So.
And we spoke about, we put a round figure out there of you were 20% under power, essentially.
Yeah.
Deep in your menstrual cycle. So that's huge. That is when we're talking about a few seconds mattering.
Yeah.
20%, that's a lot. So imagine how many female athletes have gone in the past to train at their highest level, perform at their highest level, with no regards to that whatsoever, and have no idea or no connection to why they were off on that time, or why they were lower energy. It's fascinating.
I just think being a woman, you really have to honor your body and give nature, the chance. I feel being a mom as well, like a lot of things have changed for me in the last few years, and I had to, heal myself, recover, make sure I'm able to do this. My kids are now 9 and 11, and I waited for more than 10 years to be able to train like this. Yeah. That's why I'm so fired up, because in the beginning, yes, freediving was great. I competed once or twice, and then I was pregnant and had these 3 kids, one after the other, and the third, twins and everything. And I can't say I ever stopped training. I always went to the pool and, dived in the ocean when I could, and I felt really quite strong, and I maintained my health. But I was also aware, it's probably going to take me a decade before I get a chance to train like this. Yeah. And that's why I'm so hungry for it. I'm 44 now, but freediving is one of these amazing sports, perhaps like marathon running, that older people, even 40s, 50s, you are reaching your peak at this age, so that's very special.
So here we are approaching or just hit 30 laps, and I remember some of these Big 10 chunks were important ones psychologically, and that's a lot of the stuff that I learnt from above the pool, was trying to tune into, we're in 2 different worlds a little bit, and I'm kind of the bridge of those worlds. So Misha's been training me, and I'm doing the best I can to learn and this dynamic no fins technique, and a big part of that is so I can understand for her and be the best I can be at that point. So one of the challenges for me on the day, which I thoroughly enjoyed actually, was trying to sort of protect from the energy of the crowd and the people, everyone watching, and the cameras, and then translate to you that it's another training day, it's super calm, you're doing awesome, we're really relaxed, And so, you know, there is a world above the pool and a world below. So every time we hit those 10 marks, you know, I feel more in tune and connected to where you're at. And it gives this, you know, belief every time you hit a 10. You know, there's more belief. And especially once you get past 50, 30 laps for me is still just right in the early meat of this. Anything could happen. But, you know, we're still past 20, and that was the critical, how are you going to respond in those first 20 laps gives us a fair indication of how you're going to be in the last 20. So this is an interesting point for me around this 30, because you're really into it now. I can see the rhythm, I can see what's going to happen, and we can start to play around with times and a little bit more specific advice of what we need to do. But yeah, I remember this point quite vividly.
Yeah, at some point, probably earlier than this, I told you I'm feeling awesome, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Because, as Joe was saying, the first 20 is the hardest, even though you would expect I'm fresh and they're the easiest. But, you know, mentally you're going from normal life, breathing and, you know, doing your thing to going underwater. And that takes a little bit of time to adjust to it. And for me, that's 20 laps. And on this particular day, I remember not having any urge to breathe whatsoever. I was just breathing, you know, at each end, and I actually wanted to go faster.
Yes.
I was like, let's go, this is too slow. I really was like fired up, but then I was just, this is the beginning, you know, I can't go. I've gone too fast in the past in training.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's a really important discussion and point is, you know, how important it is to train well and do what you say you're going to do in training, because they're all trials.
Yes.
And the amount we learnt over that 6-month period was phenomenal, from what goggles work and what goggles don't work, from
All
what
the
cap,
equipment failures.
yeah, what cap works and what cap is like a giant drag in the water, what wetsuit works, what zips come undone, all sorts of things.
The tap, remember, the tap on the wall was a big issue. I used to forget it all the time.
Yep, the tapping on the wall, like for a long time there, Mish was not even tapping the wall, so none of the laps would have been official. So that was a whole new habit that needed to be formed. So yeah, it's amazing what's learnt on you know, the training, and that's what the training is for. It's to sort of iron out the creases and make this whole process as smooth as possible and relatively known and familiar. So this lane, we basically owned the lane the best we could over the past few months, because it was that familiarity again.
The drain.
The drain, yeah, we know exactly where the drain is.
Yes, there are 2 drains. And when I just fly past them, I go, hello sometimes, you know, it's quite nice to smile at them. Are you still here? Hey, you haven't gone anywhere, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so back to the speed, you know, and why that conversation come about. Oftentimes, well, one of the times in particular, Michaela was feeling really good and she went really fast, and we were both, I think, a little bit surprised at how quick she burned out. And we made a deal with each other that when we're getting to this sort of more critical point of training and we're definitely on the world record, we need to stay on time. And there was a psychological change, because when I was doing her countdowns originally, 10, 9, 8, 7, she'd be underwater. And she had this feeling, and, you know...
I just didn't want to hear one.
Yeah, you didn't want to hear one. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did not want to hear one. So you had this urgency, and there was almost this rush. And so the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 was all almost alarming on your nervous system.
Yes.
And we had a discussion, and we said, 1 is good. You're allowed to feel 1. You're allowed to hear 1. And so, and again, I remember you responded really quickly. And then it was like, oh, 1 is just using the time that you have. And once we did this and we used the 1, I was able to then make sure that you stayed on track. And then if we want to speed it up at the, you know, the further end of the world record, of course we can put the foot to the floor. But it's important that we stayed on time, and we didn't rush it, because we had, at this point, you know, 60 laps to go. So very critical to not allow the excitement and the emotions to override.
Yeah. Joe, I remember at some point a few weeks ago, we've been training separately in the sense that for a very long time I was in the water and then we switched and you were in the
Yeah.
water. And there was this one session where I suggested, let's just train together.
Yeah.
Remember, we were both
Yeah.
in the water, and
Yeah.
you said that was quite eye-opening for you. You really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's something that happens in high level training, and I think it's seriousness is one. And seriousness is great, and it's a very important foundation and building block because it's coupled with discipline and motivation and consistency and all those things. But it can also go too far and become just intense and serious. And so I've absolutely been a culprit of this. So for me, like bringing play and joy and joking and stirring each other up in that way is like been this really important aspect of the longevity of the training. And so yeah, I just remember as soon as the games kicked in and we were both training together, there was this like really healthy competition and it was fun, and all of a sudden I was burning, but it was like, well, I'm burning but I don't want to lose, so
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep going. And you realize that play and competition is actually such a beautiful thing and such a positive thing.
Yeah, because freediving is a very lonely sport.
Yes.
You're holding your breath, you're under the water, it's very quiet, you hear nothing.
Yeah.
So you hear your thoughts and that's it. So suddenly when you were there, it was just a different focus. It was really cool. It wasn't just me,
Yes.
And it was hard because I went quite slow and easy on you to begin with, but then I was like, no, it's actually, we're trying to catch each other from different ends of the pool.
Yeah.
And you just kept going, and then made me a bit upset, like, oh, he's really putting everything into it. I now have to catch him, and I was getting tired in a good way, That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think competition has almost like a bad association in a lot of sports. People think that heavy competition's a bad thing, but it depends on the attitude that you bring to competition.
Yeah.
Competition can be amazing camaraderie and amazing fun, as long as it's done healthily. And I think there's a healthy level of ego there where you are trying to push yourself and you need other good people around you. And so a big part of it for me jumping in the pool with you was I wanted to feel more and more a part of your world, so then I could understand you and your needs more. And so I spoke to you many times about this during our training and preparation for this world record, was I wanted to also be the best I could be, and there was a whole learning there for me. It was a different world and I thoroughly enjoyed it, probably not as much as you enjoyed your training because it was so much more, but there was a lot going on there for me which I really, really valued, and I learned a lot during that period of time. And it was crazy how many little tricks and things that I learned, and I practiced talking to you a lot in the laps. I practiced not talking to you at all and just seeing how you would respond, and there was a lot going on there which was great.
Yeah, I think in the end we definitely developed this connection, and I don't know how on earth you know what I'm feeling, because to me, I even look at this video and I look exactly the same on each lap, but then in like 50 laps, Joe is able to tell me at lap 44 you didn't feel perfect, or you were a tiny bit more exhausted or something, and I was like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
It's quite incredible to me.
And that is a part of like being under the water and knowing those feelings as well. And as you mentioned about your desire for being a really high level coach, is you need to lead by experience and you have to know those things. So, I sort of recognise your own little cues and things that were going on. So yeah, amazing. Mm-hmm. So we're at 47, we're approaching, I would often use the term here that we're approaching the top of the mountain, which would be the peak, which is halfway.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, I had no idea what number we were at. I just fell into this rhythm, the flow. I was really just trying to feel how like special it was, the situation, and I was trying to remember it. Because I know, we're training for so long and so many hours, months go into it, and then it's all gone in 1 hour.
Yeah.
it's not such a long time. So I was really trying to process everything, and different things were going through my mind at this point. You know, there's a lot of things happening around the world. And here I am doing laps in beautiful Australia with friends and family, being in the peak shape and form of my life. I felt super happy, privileged, you know, thankful for all of this.
And I think that was one of the main connections for me and you coming together actually in training, was that it wasn't a big, you know, look at us show. It was like from the get-go we spoke about like things like gratitude and appreciation, and we often talked about some of the, you know, big worldly events that are happening at present and wars and all these types of things. And perspective was something that was really important, and this was equally as about raising awareness around that sort of stuff. And you know, you made the Take 3 for the Sea charity happen, and we did a lot of work for those guys and raised a lot of awareness around that. And you know, we even come up with, you know, our little sayings and things that we needed to focus on in these 10-lap lots, and they were all things outside of ourselves and outside of you. And I was really impressed that you had that awareness, because it's not always in high-level athletes that there's any awareness outside of themselves. And I don't mean that, you know, personally to anyone, but I'm in this world myself, and it's really nice when athletes go above and beyond their own, you know, self-centered kind of view. And it becomes about appreciation, it becomes about gratitude, it becomes about, wow, we are so lucky, and you're so lucky that you get to do these things. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and I do sincerely believe that I would go as far as saying that that is actually the driver of what made this happen and made you be able to train at that level and do 100 laps and get a world record, was because it wasn't just about you, you know, and that's cool.
Yeah, it was always gonna be about more. I just didn't know what it was in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I was searching, and you know, through the journey, I started reading lots of books and audiobooks. I was just like cramming all these ideas and information. My phone is full of notes. I couldn't wait to share these notes with you and the new experiences, you know. Our sessions were probably 3 hours every time, because we spent 2 hours talking about things. This, to me, this was like part of it, you know, the mental and spiritual stuff that was coming up for me. I did one absolutely huge and revolutionary change in my life. I started getting up at 5 a.m. Me, the night owl person who is up until midnight and, you know, in the morning just tries to sleep until, you know, 10 snoozes later I'm still sleeping, you know. And I read this book, The 5 a.m. Club, where the author talks about all these benefits when you start getting up at 5 in the dark even, and what you can do with that time. And I thought, well, I'm about to, you know, I'm working on being a champion, you know, and this is what champions do. I reckon I should give it a go. And this was really something, because not only that I gained all this time in the morning of quiet, you know, and peace, but I started opening up, you know, meditation, things that came to me and became part of my training. That was amazing. It was life-changing, really.
And I think, you know, it'd be interesting for people to understand this as well about you. You've been very good at recognizing any parts of yourself that you know have a desire to change, and actually sticking to it and changing. And I remember one of the ones that had quite fast was, I was always getting to the pool before you.
Oh,
and
yes,
it
this
really
was a
annoyed
huge
you.
change.
It really bugged you.
Yes.
And then, interestingly, from the moment that you verbalized that how much it actually annoyed you, and you did, you know, you didn't feel good about that, and you cared a lot more about the people that you know were responsible for and with, you then beat me to the pool every single time. So that was a radical change, and it happened and it didn't stop. So I'm pretty sure you won that race for the rest of the time. And, you know, again, that's not that normal.
Yeah, okay, well, that's huge, because yes, I was trying to improve myself on so many levels, and I felt if you can turn up on time, having the life you have, no sleep, baby, 4 kids, 100 jobs, you turn up on time, and I don't, I felt honestly it was just so rude and disrespectful because I can't organize my time, and there's no excuse to do that, you know. So there was one moment where I actually crashed a car, our four-wheel drive, that went 38,000 kilometers around Australia. And I crashed it 50 meters from the pool because I was late.
Yeah.
And there was a wake-up call. No one got hurt, luckily, but the car is written off. You know, it was my mistake. And, you know, it was such a huge physical shock that I really decided something has to change. I can't keep doing this, you know, to me, to others. And managing my time was one of those big things.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And the other thing that I've noticed, and I'm not sure whether, you know, you were already on this journey or it's, just been developing recently, but it's been really fun and interesting to watch you from, there's like a serious and intensity in everything, not only the training, but now you can still switch on to the seriousness and the intensity in the training, but like really have fun, enjoying the process. What's your thoughts on that? Because, we've spoken about this, and I used to train, competitively in martial arts and would just beat myself up, and training was just a place you go and smash yourself, and it's miserable. I'm not sure if you felt the same level of misery as I did of training so hard, but it becomes a habit and you don't even realize you're in it. But you were in your own version of that. So, how's that changed for you now?
Well, my background and how I grew up, so that has a lot to do with it, this seriousness. And, I grew up in a communist country where everything is just very serious and it's all about your achievement. And if you're not the best, then you are shit, That's how I was brought up, to...
A lot of self-pressure.
Well, yeah, and from my parents, especially just... You have to perform your best, otherwise it's nothing. Even if you try hard, but you're not the best, you don't win, it's not good enough.
If you're not first, you're last.
Exactly. Something like that. So, this is very deeply ingrained in me, but with age and living life a couple more decades, you realize that's not the most important thing.
No.
It's about the journey.
It is, yeah.
And who you become while you are on that journey. How, it was 1 hour of our time what we are watching, but 6 months of all this development, of all these rich experiences, no one can take that away from us.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I would argue the point that I feel like performance actually increases when there's a bit of lightness and fun and play and games and things around it, because it kind of loosens you up into the right place. And even the other day, post world record, a few days after this, you got back in the pool and trained, and I was crying with laughter behind the microphone. And you performed at a really high level, and it was...
That was my second training session. First one was with Jordy.
First one was with Jordy, and then and this was like mostly a joke, but you performed so well.
Look, I don't know. I'm just, when I'm on the job and free diving, But then, having said that, Joe, I have playfulness in the ocean, and you haven't seen me yet.
Yeah.
For me, ocean is the freedom. Yeah. It's what makes my heart sing, and I get asked a lot if I'm going to compete in depth, and honestly, I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no if you ask me today.
Yeah.
Because they would take away that fun and freedom and not really worrying about the numbers, but going deep and just doing it for the joy.
Yeah, I have a lot
you
of
know?
respect for professional surfers who choose not to compete as well, because they say, and even more respect for the people who make a living out of being professional free surfers. But they actually they hold their ground and they hold their nerve and they say, no, look, I'm not going to cross over between something that I love and then being judged upon that and scored upon that. So, they're all their own paths and no right or wrong, but yeah, it is interesting and I can really relate to that.
Yeah. So we'll see when I go to Egypt next year and really train depth for the first time in my life. How do I take it? I may actually do one competition just so I know how to coach somebody who is going through that experience.
Beautiful, yeah.
And I recently became a judge in freediving, depth and pool, so that just gives me another perspective, to be able to coach people to that level that I know what is expected of them in competition and how the system works. So that was awesome to learn, but we'll wait and see with that.
Yeah. And I think you've been a great pioneer in freediving in its own right, because in Australia, as far as I can see, it's still a very, very small sport. And the way I know that is because we would train and, we're on world record time and you're pushing yourself to such a high level. And I look over and there's nobody there. Nobody knows. And then I even, call in a really beautiful close mate of mine and I say, can you just, film us for a moment? And he just looks at me and he's like, do you know what I love about this? Nobody even knows what you're doing, and it's just at such a high level, and if that was any other sport. So, freediving's got a long way to go as far as its growth here in Australia, and I think you sort of opened up at least the local community in particular. They really got behind you, and I'm sure you felt that.
Yeah, it was great, especially the old ladies, I was surprised. They knew, there's documentary on Netflix these days, they watched it, or we had amazing chats in the shower about them ocean swimming, and they admire me even from the distance, that they think it's really cool sport. And the top countries in the world when it comes to freediving, they're really just two, maybe three. So the best ones are Italians. That's kind of where if you are a freediving champion, you are known publicly. You are like a rock star. I even heard during COVID that Alessia Zacchini was allowed to train in pools during COVID.
Wow.
No one else was, not
That is
even
rock star
swimmers.
status.
Rock star status. Whereas here,
get out.
Yeah, we are on the bottom of the barrel. It's quite the opposite,
absolutely.
isn't it?
I mean, we were fighting pensioners for our lane, and trying to be as respectful as possible. And, oftentimes Mish would say to me, Joe, can you please just go and deal with that person today? I just don't have it in me to basically have an argument or a debate with somebody if we could borrow their lane. But to their credit, 99% of the time they're very, very amazing and more than happy to jump out and help us out. So
most of the time they were lovely, weren't
they? Yeah, absolutely.
Because it just looks like there's no one there. You can't blame them, They don't see anybody splashing around.
No. A week ago, probably a few days prior to the world record, it was quite funny for me. Mish was doing a really, it felt a little bit more serious that session, and she was a bit of a bullet train. And I remember she was up the far end of the pool, and this lady just walked in and started walking down the stairs. And I started saying to her, oh, she's coming. Like, can you please move? And she's looking at me like, who's coming? Like, what's coming? And then this submarine just smashes into her legs. And I'm like, that's coming. And then she was she got a fright. She thought there was a shark in the pool almost. So there's a few funny moments like that.
Oh, that's funny. So good. Okay, guys, so now you see there's Jordi on the left. Jordi is the best free diver in Australia in quite a few disciplines. She holds quite a few national records. And she came all the way from Brisbane to join me for my last 20 plus laps. And when she suggested it, I was stoked because we actually never spoken properly in person. We only seen each other once in competition. And, she could perceive me as, like I'm her competition. But, on this day, she chooses to support me instead of going against each other. It was such a beautiful gesture, I thought.
It was, yeah, and it was such a big energy lift too. Even though you were doing so well, and it was, you know, at this point I was extremely confident in a lot of things. There was a huge energy change still, and she brought a lot of energy to that, and it almost felt like it was like, absolutely, this is happening, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, full thanks and gratitude for her for making such a big effort and getting in there. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I inspired her to train because she didn't have a massively, you know, went to World Championships in South Korea, and she didn't do as well as she wanted, and she felt a bit low for a couple of months and didn't even want to get in the pool and train. But this, you know, world record inspired her to get in and have a bit of fun, don't be so serious, and started doing no things, and that was amazing, you know.
Yeah, there was I was never coached and trained to coach two people, so it was a new thing for me. I was taking my normal place where I do my little one-legged squat down on the tiles. I know exactly where to be and where to put my knees, and all of a sudden Geordie's in the other lane and I realised she couldn't hear me, and I had to team up, so there was a bit of adjustment there, which was a little bit of fun. And then I realised poor Geordie, she's you know, not quite as tall as Mish, and so I realised that she couldn't actually touch at the far end of the pool, so she was not getting a recovery at the start, so she was really under the pump.
Yeah, but she's a tough cookie, you know. I knew she was gonna make it, so for her 25s are no problem, you know. I'm pretty sure she could probably swim it right next to me, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, she was more than capable of doing it.
So, here you go, Joe.
Yeah, we're getting into the last sort of bigger chunk now. We always said, one of my sort of questions was, at what point do you know that no matter how tough something is that you're going to make it? And we sort of discussed that at being, you know, 85 laps-ish. So, you know, we kind of still were in a critical point here. There's still, you know, 23 laps to go, and, you know, we sort of needed to get a bit closer.
You know what lap was it for me?
No.
One.
Yeah, you were good.
I told, I don't know who I was talking, many people, but I was saying, even if I get cramps in both my calves, which sometimes happen, I got cramp here and there.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I have to finish with one arm,
you will.
I will.
Yeah, I knew that.
It wasn't going to happen that I wasn't going to do it.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe I wasn't sure, of course, if I would do 100 or more.
Yes.
But I was always going to do my very best, like I do in each and every training session.
And something else that is, you know, definitely worth a quick chat about, which was, I was, you know, a little bit surprised at the start, but just absolute respect for it once it kind of was nice and clear. But you've always been really big on the safety. And I remember a few times you had some good, honest, hard conversations with me and basically drew the line in the sand and said, you know, this is what you can do, and these are the things that you definitely can't do. And, you know, I told you that I had done a few different pool sessions, and you said, absolutely not. You know, that is not what you need to do. And so I think the general public, and especially through different documentaries and things that come out, people associate freediving with dying. It's basically goes hand in hand. And I've, you know, especially working with you, it feels so far from the truth of how it should be, and its potential as it could be. Is that always been there for you, the safety element, or is it something that you had your own experiences to say, yes, this needs to be more of a priority?
I was completely the opposite when I started. I was totally reckless, young, thinking what can happen, what can go wrong, until my friends started dying.
Yeah.
You know, in the ocean, in the pool, both. And, you know, it really shook me. And quite a few people have died over the years. Yeah. Two personally that I knew, and then friends of friends, you know, you hear stories. It's a small freediving community around the world. And all of these deaths are so unnecessary, you know. So I had to promise Jochen, my family, if I'm to do this sport, this is how I'm going to do it. And I will keep advocating for safety, everybody who comes across me, I hope, will take this on board, because it's so easy. It's an extreme sport for the reason that if you make series of small mistakes,
there's lives on the line.
There's a life on the line, and you can die, and many people do, because you have very small window to react.
Yeah, I can say for sure, like I've done my entry level courses, and I've done all my surf survival stuff. I've surfed my whole life, and spearfishing's something that I really enjoy. But you really drove that home for me, and now I really respect it and I understand it. And when I say understand it, to the best of my capacity right now. But I do understand that things can go wrong, and now I'm also starting to realise that I'm becoming a strong advocate for this and saying, you know what, like, look after each other, keep your eyes on the water. And I even noticed that with myself. I know your capacity, I know 25 metres, nothing's going to happen, but I still don't even look away for a second, just because that's what you have to do, And it's nice feeling when you know that, you have that, because I feel really safe in the water. I know you're watching. I know that it's going to be, okay, if something does happen, there's 1,000 steps you can do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the better you get, the higher the danger becomes. So once you send me this really nice voicemail about you diving in Wollongong by yourself, it was end of the day, you were tired, you went to the pool and did your training session, and you said you felt like you could have kept going forever, and how nice and relaxing and easy it felt. These are the situations.
Yeah, and looking back now, I can see those are the situations. I mean, if they didn't shut the pool and kick me out, I would have just been in there, and that's the time when it happens.
Exactly. So it can be as easy as dehydration.
Yes.
Tiredness.
Yes.
And the body just goes lights off like this, and you don't even know about it. And
there must be, just an element of maturity too. Like, I think when you're young, it's hard to really care so much about consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you got kids and family and loved ones and partners, beautiful, supportive partners to come home to it. It drives a whole nother level that you are responsible, and you do need to take that seriously. So anyway, it's something that's been really pleasing for me with you, and it makes me feel like training together and doing events together and teaching other people these things. It feels good. It feels like a really nice way. I'd be much more reluctant to do that with someone who didn't regard the safety at the level that you do. So that's
thanks,
nice.
Joel.
Yeah.
Awesome. I want to ask you something about how did you find the transfer of knowledge and the skills that we practice, the breath holds and so on, and the relaxation, the smoothness and all of that. How did that translate to your different sports, into jiu-jitsu and into surfing and everything else that you do?
Yeah, it's been massive actually, huge, as you would hope, I guess, but you don't really know until you practice, train and experience it. So, I've been making my own baby steps and progressing in my own freediving practice, as you've shared lots of technique stuff, and it's really translated a lot and helped massively. And some of the examples would be, like, I'll start with surfing because it's an obvious one. When we surf, you never stop at the beach and take a series of breaths and do a breath hold practice prior to surfing, because you start surfing when you're young, and so you're so excited, you're just screaming at your mate. It's high adrenaline, and you paddle out like a maniac, and you just want to take on the first wave that comes at you. So it's the opposite of an intelligent approach. So actually, the first time I consciously tried it was after a session with you. We had a decent period swell, and there was some sort of chunkier waves in the ocean, and it wasn't death defying by any stretch, but serious enough to warrant like a bit of focus. And I decided to take a really different approach. So I took your advice, and I sat down on the beach, and I did 3 breath holds, and just to prepare. So that first wipe out of the day is not my first breath hold of the day, because it is terrible comparatively to your second, and it's terrible comparatively to your third. And so I did this. That was the first thing that I did consciously as a practice prior to surfing, a bit bigger and more, serious consequence waves. And then the second part of that was, for some reason, when, again, we're young and you lock it in and you paddle out as fast as you can, because essentially you're beating your mate to go and get the first wave. And then once you pull off your first wave, you're basically trying to beat everybody else back out there, and it's all fun, but it makes this pace. And so you're breathing fast, you're paddling hard, and when you really break it down, in big surf, there's no need to do that. You should have an allocated time and be able to take your time. So I decided in, this particular surf as a really conscious practice to see how different it was. So again, I did the breath holds on the beach. I paddled out really slow, not trying to get out so I didn't get a set on the head. I was okay if I got a set on the head, just take my time. And I was very surprised when I got out there how much more prepared I was and how much more focused I was. And then if I did happen to wipe out at that point, just significantly more prepared than normal. So that's translated massive. The other part is between waves has translated huge. If I do get really excited and I get a bunch of waves, the recovery breathing from a freedive perspective is massively helpful of just purging CO2 and resetting quickly between waves. And jiu-jitsu, absolutely. I mean, it's an intense sport in many ways, and training freediving and dealing with that strong urge to breathe, it takes the pressure off the situation in a martial arts setting or a jiu-jitsu session where you're about to be submitted or choked or whatever it is. It's familiar, and this is not the time to overreact, this is the time to relax. And so under pressure, you go the other way and you become more soft and more relaxed, which is I think it's the best superpower you'll get in something like jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, guys, and I'm about to try it out on my own skin.
Amazing.
I'm gonna have jiu-jitsu class next week, and I've been watching some YouTube videos to try to get myself ready for it. It's massively out of my comfort zone, but that's why I want to do it. So I can apply my relaxation technique and
We'll
everything.
see. Yeah, we'll see. So 5 laps to go here to get the 100. So at this point, my nerves started to shoot up because I wanted to make sure that we didn't mess the counter, we didn't mess the timer up. I had multiple phones. I had beautiful friends helping me out with multiple phones and timers. And I knew that Mish was feeling really strong. So I knew at some point here she was going to not even come up on a 25 and do a 50. So trying to get the timing of that and everything was, it was a bit nerve-wracking for me here, to be fair.
Poor Joe.
Yeah.
You were doing all the work, obviously, Look at you have to run around and manage the time and everything, You should be the world champion.
I know, tough life.
I am just chilling under the water, not worrying about the thing. Let them do all that stuff. That's what I was thinking.
And what if they say, you missed one of the taps on the wall, you did 99, and they would look at me and say, Joe, that's your fault.
Actually, that's something that did cross my mind, because I was so in the flow that I was thinking, I hope I really touched everything.
I was checking pretty much every 10 laps with the official counter, and I said, are we good? Has she got it? Have you seen any she hasn't? I was checking every 10 laps because I was nervous about that.
Great. Good to know.
But you were so locking that tap in that it was fine.
Look, you can see Jordi coming up there on my right, and she's a little bit shorter than me, so she has to do more strokes. But she's going really well. Now Joe tells me 2 laps to go, and here I go. 50 meters, this one, I think. No one even noticed. Yeah,
and poor Jordi, I didn't tell her.
No.
We had a little sign that Mish would hold her hand up, and it was like 5 fingers.
Did you know, Joe, that I was doing it?
Yeah, I knew.
Oh,
I knew you were doing 50.
You're probably the only one.
Yeah, and I said to Jordi when she come up, I said, sorry, Jordi, she's already gone, so you'll see Mish turn here.
Yeah.
And then Jordi still manages to take a quick breath and gets back under there, so she truly championed that one. So there she goes.
I'm already coming. Because, Joe, there was misunderstanding. I asked you to tell me 1 minute, not
Yes.
2 laps.
That's right, I know.
Yeah.
So it was excitement for
Bit
me
more.
here, but you know, you can't get it right first time every time. So here we come up and she's got the 100, there's the world record.
And I'm celebrating. And
she's
why no one
celebrating.
is saying anything? Why no one's doing anything?
Johan, I said to Johan, have we got time? And he tells me there's
1
still
minute.
time. All right, go again.
Go, go, go.
Enjoy, lock it in. This was my insurance policy lap.
Yeah. And you know, okay, I'm breathing a bit longer because I just did a 50, so that's normal. You know, I was
So we're back on
going to-
pace anyway.
Yeah. Look, we did lose a bit of time. It's okay.
Yeah.
And Jordi and I, we were just, let's go.
There's
One
a
more.
lot of beautiful camaraderie there happening. It was really, really nice. And then the last lap from memory was saying to both of you guys, just go on your own time and completely enjoy this special experience.
Yeah. So, and it ended up being 101 laps and 10 meters official length.
So, you know, still 16 seconds. There's the 101.
Yeah.
There's the high fi.
Let's go, Jordi. Last lap.
So there's the 10 meters, the big shoot.
That's it.
Beautiful. And again, I was nervous at this point. I wanted to jump straight in the pool, but I didn't want to wreck anything officially. So I'm like, oh, what can I do?
Oh. I don't remember this. Did I say anything? Yes, so good. I wasn't even so tired, but you know what? At this stage, I was feeling a headache. Like I was so happy and LA, you know, just over the moon. But when things start to open up, when you start to breathe, everything just... My head was absolutely just exploding, but I didn't care.
It's so good, all the kids and
Yes,
Johan
look.
ready to... I'm getting hustled out here to make sure you talk.
What? I don't know, what was I supposed to say something?
Hey, you just said, I can't believe I did it.
Okay guys, so that's us. Thank you so much for listening. I
Yeah,
hope you got something out of it. There he goes.
Tina was stoked.
Oh, that's my hubby
He's
flying in,
He's flying in, ready to go.
celebrating.
Amazing.
Huge accomplishment from everybody.
And all the kids.
Yes. Let's plan another world record. 24-hour relay.
Oh, big sigh for me, yep.